We are once again discussing Albert Ellis's rational emotive behavior therapy. And in this lecture, we're focusing on the therapeutic techniques and procedures, so the intervention methods that are associated with this particular type of cognitive behavior therapy. So the techniques associated with REBT fall into three categories: cognitive, emotive, and behavioral. So interventions that focus on your client's cognitive processes, their emotions, and their behaviors. So let's start with discussing the cognitive methods. So some of the cognitive techniques associated with REBT are disputing irrational beliefs. So the therapist is going to be actively involved in questioning and testing the client's beliefs that seem to be irrational. Clients will be asked to do cognitive homework. These can be assignments like recording and thinking about how their beliefs contribute to their problems. The therapist may ask them to put themselves in risk-taking situations that will allow them to challenge self-limiting beliefs. And what comes to mind when I think about this is I once had a client who was a freshman in college who was very self-critical and very hyper-aware of herself and had a lot of social anxiety and phobias. And so one thing she said was that she never wore anything that exposed her legs. So, living in Houston, she wore pants or leggings full time because she was so self-conscious about her legs. And so I asked her, what do you think would happen if you were to have your legs exposed? And she said, I think that people will point at me and laugh at me and criticize me. So one of her homework assignments was to go to the mall wearing shorts, to stay at least for 1 hour and record the number of people who pointed at her, stared at her, laughed at her, or criticized her. So, of course, this was an irrational belief. There was nothing at all wrong with her legs. She challenged this belief. She went to the mall and recorded that nobody gave her a second glance. So this proved to her that this belief that, people were paying so much attention to her and her legs was in fact irrational. Another cognitive method would be bibliotherapy. So here's where you're prescribing books for your client to read that will help educate them about their problem that they're experiencing or the change process, or they're gaining some type of knowledge through these books that the therapist is recommending. Another cognitive method that can bring about behavior change is changing one's language. So language is often one of the causes of distorted thinking, which leads to these irrational reactions. And so I typically challenge my students to try to go for one full day using only accurate language. And this can show us how distorted our language really can be. So, for example, if it's approaching lunchtime, you may typically say to yourself, oh, I'm starving. Now, this is obviously an irrational, distorted belief. So instead of saying to yourself, I'm starving, say, it's been several hours since my last meal and I would like something to eat. So your emotional reaction to it's been several hours since my last meal and I would like something to eat is likely to be much less extreme than your emotional reaction to I'm starving. So again, I would challenge you to use realistic language for one full day and see how that um, changes your reactions to certain situations. Another cognitive method that is frequently used with REBT is psychoeducation. So this is where the therapist helps educate clients about the nature of their problem and how therapy is likely to proceed. And again, this can go along with bibliotherapy. And next we have some emotive techniques. So these are things that deal with the emotions. The first is rational emotive imagery. And here the client is asked to vividly imagine one of the worst things that may happen to them and describe their feelings. And the purpose of this is to, number one, show clients how they can be catastrophizing, how, the worst thing they can imagine is in reality probably manageable. And then you can help train them to develop healthy emotions. And so another example, going back to the same client who was dealing with social phobia and just anxiety in general, she had this belief that she would lose her phone. So she checked on her phone in her purse and her bag just literally hundreds of times a day to make sure that her phone was still there. And in her mind, the worst thing that could happen would be that she lost her phone. So I went through the process of rational emotive imagery with her, asking her to vividly think about what would happen if you lost your phone. And in reality, she was like, well, my phone is insured. I would have to call, my phone, cell phone provider and have this phone shut off. I would have to pay the deductible to get a new phone. The new phone would come in and all of my information would be transferred to the new phone because it's backed up um, on the cloud. So she was spending so much time thinking how horrible it would be if she lost her phone. She's spending time checking over and over. And in reality, even if the worst thing that she could imagine, she lost her phone, were to happen, she knows the steps to resolve that issue and it's not as bad as she thinks it is. So this moved her from the irrational thought that, oh my goodness, the world is going to end if I lose my phone, to if I lose my phone, it'll be a minor inconvenience. It'll cost me some money, but I can handle this situation. Another emotive technique is the use of humor. So you want to, teach clients to laugh at themselves and to not take everything so seriously. You can also have them engage in role playing. Role playing. So here clients rehearse certain roles to bring out what they feel in a certain situation. So the idea is that they pretend to act out a particular situation and they talk about the emotions associated with that situation. And the focus is on working through the underlying irrational beliefs that lead to the unpleasant feelings. So, before you have a test, let's pretend that you're preparing for a test. You're in your room, you're studying, we're acting out this role play. What are your thoughts? And the client may say, I'm thinking that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to get to the test and I'm going to freeze up. I'm going to fail the test and have to repeat the class. And so those underlying irrational beliefs may be leading to their feeling of anxiety associated with taking the test. And once you can get them to talk about the thoughts, then you can help them see that these things are irrational. They're either totally incorrect or they're probably exaggerated, and your exaggerated or irrational beliefs are contributing to the anxiety. You can also have them carry out shame attacking exercises. This is where the client takes the risk of doing something they would ordinarily be afraid to do because of what others may think. And the goal is the client learns that others' reactions don't have to stop them from doing things that they would like to do. So, kind of go back to that client who was so ashamed of going out with her legs exposed. She took the chance. She did something that she ordinarily wouldn't do because of what other people might think. And she found out that just because others may think something, that doesn't have to stop me from doing what I want to do. So you're challenging the client to step outside their comfort zone and to take the risk of being criticized by others. And either they will not be criticized and they'll realize that their belief is totally irrational, or they may be criticized and they'll realize that I can handle criticism from others and that doesn't have to be something that stops me from doing what I need to do. And finally, you have the behavioral techniques. And these are some of the same techniques that we discussed last week with behavior therapy. So, operant conditioning. You can have them reinforce or punish certain behaviors or reinforce or punish certain thoughts. Self-management principles. This can be things like, recording your behavior and trying to purposely increase or decrease certain behaviors. Systematic desensitization, where you're teaching your client to calm themselves and to maintain a relaxed composure while they're being exposed to something that causes them anxiety. Just general relaxation, whether it be deep breathing or visualization when they're under stress, or modeling, where you can actually model appropriate behavior for them in various situations.